You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Proud to be brought to you by Cold Weather. Buy everything you need to make French toast and make bad decisions on the road. Cold Weather, a proud sponsor of the Tony Kinnett Cast. Well, sponsors out of the way, let's dig into some of the news. Federal judges are slinging out as many final orders. They really don't want to come in over the weekend. They are issuing stays. They are issuing freezes. No pun intended, given the cold weather thing. There's a lot going on, so we're going to give you as many details as we can. Federal judges have now rejected the Department of Justice motion to continue detaining the arrested Minneapolis protesters and agitators who stormed the city's church in Minneapolis, disrupted the church service, violated the FACE Act, terrified children, trespassed, refused to leave, did a lot of really awful and ugly things in a premeditated fashion. And now, one particular judge who goes by the name of Laura M. Provenzino wrote in her order for two of the protesters, namely Nakima Valdez-Levy Armstrong and Chantil Louisa Allen, that the Justice Department lawyers failed to, quote, demonstrate that a detention hearing is warranted or that detention is otherwise appropriate, end quote. So I got to tell you, right off the top of the bat here, that's not going to fly. That's not going to fly. The idea that there is a particular judge in Minnesota who has decided in this particular district case that the federal government did not meet certain standards to detain these individuals is not going to protect them from charges on the FACE Act. Neither, by the way, is help for William Scott Kelly, the bearded wonder who says lots of spicy words to get a rise out of people, the one who was screaming at the crying children in the church. A separate federal magistrate judge, yes, that magistrate judge, you know, the one who whose wife is an assistant attorney general with Keith Ellison, that particular magistrate judge says that William Kelly, who has, again, threatened violence openly multiple times and also lied about his combat record, but, you know, given Tim Walz, that's a kind of a standard in Minnesota, kind of a bad dude, also has now been ordered to be released. So we really are in the place right now where federal judges and magistrates are attempting as hard as they can to do whatever is possible to thwart the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security, up to and including releasing anyone and everyone, violent or not, back out onto the streets. For example, Monique Worrell, who is a prosecutor down in Florida, made the case that Ahmad Jihad Bohe, who was previously found not guilty by reason of insanity for firing at people and vehicles in 2021, triple homicide. State Attorney Monique Worrell has now stated that Ahmad Jihad Bohe, 29, was released under Florida law. And her argument, again, he then ended up committing, I believe, a murder outside of Disney soon afterward, has now come forward to announce the reason he was released is because he couldn't afford mental health care. So, you know, we had to let him go. I mean, clearly he's a danger to himself and others, but because he can't afford mental affirming health care, that means we let him back out on the streets. Here's her argument.
Now, I have researched into this case since the latest event has taken place. And what I found is that that individual was sentenced to conditional release. And that conditional release was that he would continue treatment with an outpatient community partner. My understanding is that that treatment was originally costing $7 a month.
Wow, $7 a month.
And that after a period of time, that $7 a month bill went up to $150+ a month.
Wow, $150 a month? I'm sorry, unless this is $17.92, that's not a lot. There's a lot of jobs out there that you could do and scrounge up $150 a month. What on earth is this?
And that the individual was no longer in compliance with his treatment because of inability to pay for that treatment. And now here we are with individuals who need mental health treatment and don't have access to that treatment. Bad things happen.
Oh, bad things happen. Oh, okay. So here's the timeline. They had to let him go. He wasn't able to afford the $150 per month treatment. And so then when he goes and, kills people outside of Disneyland, all of a sudden, or Disney World, that clearly. I mean, that's the excuse of all excuses. Incredible stuff. So federal judges everywhere, all over the country, are making the worst decisions, releasing people. And by the way, right now, what the Trump administration needs to do is continue holding those who have been arrested in the Minneapolis church protest, trespass, agitation. They need to hold them anyway. They do. The idea that federal judges just get to decide that in their district that anyone gets to violate the law, either because, $150 is expensive, or, you're allowed to go harass white and Asian people at a church. Now, that's totally fine. As long as you suspect that the pastor is a member of a law enforcement agency, that means it's okay to violate federal law and the Civil Rights Act and FACE Act and the Ku Klux Klan Act as well. So this brings us to Harmeet Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General of Civil Rights, phenomenal individual, has made it clear, A, this ain't over, and B, there's more arrests coming, whether some federal judge likes it or not. This is on Newsmax today.
I intend to identify and find every single person in that mob that interrupted that church service in that house of God and bring them to justice. And that includes so-called journalists who participated in harassing Americans at worship.
Correct answer. Now, Don Lemon, one of the individuals who has not yet been arrested, and again, who that magistrate, whose wife is an attorney general for, also under federal investigation, Attorney General Keith Ellison, Don Lemon has decided the right move to do is come out and start bragging how incredible he is and how no one can touch him and he's just untouchable, incredible stuff. Oh, the white supremacy, Don Lemon.
Look, I stand proud and I stand tall. This is not a victory lap for me because it's not over. They're going to try again.
And they should.
They're going to try again.
And they should, and they will.
And guess what? Here I am.
Wow. Stunning. Here he is in all of his, the prescription glasses that he bought from a local Walgreens. There he is.
Keep trying. That's not going to stop me from being a journalist. You're not.
Okay.
Not going to diminish my voice. Go ahead, make me into the new Jimmy Kimmel if you want.
I mean, I don't really know whose ratings are worse, yours or Jimmy Kimmel's. But I mean, if you really think that the big standard of justice that you're going to haul out for your next glorious martyr, Jimmy Kimmel, priorities are in place.
Because I'm not going anywhere and I'm going to believe the same things, whether you want to, whatever. None of this is about justice. This is about power, and it's about people who are incompetent.
I mean, given that Don Lemon is the one speaking, incompetence on full display. I can't argue with that. This brings us to the last of the federal judges that we have right now. This would be a particular federal judge in the Southern District of New York. It says Vernon Broderick, who has now extended again a previous temporary ruling requiring the federal government of the United States, and therefore you, the taxpayer, to continue funding all federal grant programs in California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York. Originally, he had placed a hold and said you have to keep funding these programs that have been found in all of these states, in California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York, to have major fraud in the grant system. And so the Trump administration came out and announced, we're not going to give another dollar, another dime until you prove it's going to Americans who really need it. And the federal judge in this case of the Southern District of New York, U.S. District Judge Vernon Broderick, said, wait a little bit here. Keep funding the fraud, which, interesting, those again are states that refused to give the Trump administration any record whatsoever. Any record of who the funds were going to and whether those were found to be legitimate or fraudulent. And as we have seen continual, and I do mean continual evidence of massive fraud all over the country in federal grant programs, from Medicare to Medicaid to the Head Start program to the supplemental nutrition assistance program to education grants at large, research grants as well. The argument should be that there should be additional steps and processes put in place to require proof of recipient before the money is allocated and granted. But now you have this federal judge from New York who has decided now is the time to just continue it ad nauseum. So originally, the Department of Health and Human Services said it was going to pause the funding because it had reason to believe the states were granting benefits to people in the country illegally. And the judge says, well, we're going to wait on that. I don't know if there's enough proof. And then after more proof, more federal investigations began. Now he has pushed, I believe, for another 2.5, 3 weeks, federal funding to continue to these particular programs. And unless you say that these are not, well, I mean, yeah, sure, the Trump administration is alleging that federal money is going to illegal immigrants. It's not like there's anyone out there actively bragging that federal money is going to illegal immigrants in this country or to fraudulent programs. Enter Mayor Zohran Mamdani of New York City, who openly bragged today that his universal child care program, kind of like the one that Tim Walz encouraged, his little family leave policy, and all the money that goes to the Somali luring centers up in Minnesota. Well, Mamdani made it very clear, explicitly clear from his Democrat socialist podium today that, everyone, including illegals, is going to have access to all of these programs because they're New Yorkers or whatever that means.
Clearly, these are programs for every single New Yorker. These are not programs that are going to ask the immigration status of any one of the children. All of those children are New Yorkers. They should all be enrolled in pre-K and 3K, no matter where they were born or where they come from.
Keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that particular line of argument in just a second.
And we are also proud to be a sanctuary city. What a sanctuary city means is that we have policies in place, policies that have existed for years in this city, that deny ICE agents access into schools, hospitals, city properties, or even the properties of city contractors.
Now, there is not one piece of federal precedent. There is not one smidge of constitutional precedent in any appeals court or the Supreme Court of the United States that has allowed any local jurisdiction to forbid federal law enforcement from coming in to that state and enforcing federal law. If there is a reasonable suspicion, whether it be affirmed through a judicial warrant or an administrative warrant, that there is an individual in a particular state, let's say South Carolina, that is breaking the law, and then South Carolina says, hey, you know what? Federal law enforcement, federal troops, you get out of here. Well, see, we actually had a little something about that particular event in Fort Sumter, and it was a really bloody, ugly civil war. So you have Democrat officials in the country openly, clearly bragging. They have policies in place, not just saying, oh, we're welcoming of immigrants. Regarding sanctuary policies, there are actual specific in New York and in Oregon, many other states, policies that they have in place that they say hold water, that try to ban federal law enforcement and those who might audit certain programs from city or local jurisdiction property. And then also, again, making it clear, the money is going to flow to individuals who should and should not receive these particular funds because they're all New Yorkers.
Unless those ICE agents can present a judicial warrant signed by a judge. We know that the vast majority of the time, ICE agents are not presenting that kind of documentation. If they're presenting any documentation, it tends to be an administrative warrant.
So he's going to say that administrative warrants are no good.
And oftentimes there isn't any documentation even provided. So we want to make clear the rights.
So did you catch that? A little play on words there. So he says, and they'll say they have an administrative warrant, but oftentimes there's no documentation provided. That's not the same thing. What he's saying is they have an administrative warrant on file, but they don't get out and say, all right, Jimmy, get the Epson printer out of the van. Go ahead, print off the 18-page administrative warrant. These administrative warrants are given after a U.S. judge has already issued a final order of removal. For those of you out there who have been told repeatedly, consistently, constantly over the last several months, these people aren't getting their due process. They need their due process. When ICE goes through with an administrative warrant, when they go throughout Minneapolis and New York, whether we're talking about Chicago or Los Angeles, and they have an administrative warrant that comes about because there is a final order of removal, which means the illegal immigrant in that case has already gone through or has failed to meet all of their processes. They have not shown up for hearings. They have done something wrong. They entered illegally and then evaded law enforcement. They have a final order of removal. The word you're looking for there is final. So when they show up with the administrative warrant, the due process has already occurred. It's already complete. I'm looking for this story that supposedly exists of a guy who's been in the country for just 2 months, and he's got his pregnant wife and children, and they're all there, and they just barely made it. And then ICE shows up, and Tom Homan goes, wah, and then he beats up the wife and the children like it's a 1950s cartoon. And then he throws them in the van, and then they are sent to a concentration camp before they're shipped to, well, I suppose that you would actually pick a really awful country on earth to deport them to, but then that would be insulting like a country like Somalia. So instead you say El Salvador or whatever. And that's the narrative that's told. That is complete and utter crap. Just like we told you that the arresting children story was complete garbage. And don't get me wrong, I take a particular amount of satisfaction in reaching a story before a lot of my right-wing counterparts the next day. This is one of the reasons why we make sure that we get the show written when we do. Regarding that particular story, by the way, there are still individuals to this very day that are trying to rest on this completely debunked story that ICE went out and they grabbed a kid and then they used the kid as bait to like beat the kid on the door of the family and say, all right, let us in, Jimmy's here crying. That didn't happen. It was a lie. But it was still pushed. The dad abandoned the child, -5-degree weather, as soon as the cops showed up, because, you know, that's what you do as a parent. As soon as the cop says, excuse me, can I talk to you for a minute? You sprint away, leaving your child with the just out there standing on the sidewalk. Well, now we have individuals like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who are doubling, tripling down on a thoroughly debunked story that children are being arrested.
But you obviously believe ICE should be abolished, but there are many in your party who are not going that far. Mm-hmm. Is that a problem for you?
I think any step in the direction of reining in and cutting the funding of an agency that is attacking U.S. citizens, that are kidnapping 5-year-olds, that are using them as bait to open doors, and that are privately circulating that they can violate everyday Americans' constitutional rights.
So the argument that people with intelligence on the left, or I should say at least a facsimile of intelligence on the left, are trying to articulate is that this violates the Fourth Amendment of the United States. No busting into your home without a warrant. The problem with this is that, again, they have a warrant, one upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States. I'll remind you, no one had a problem with this during the Obama administration, during the prior Trump administration even, the Joe Biden administration, the George Bush or the Clinton administration. Administrative warrants after all of the due process individuals. Now, some on the left will attempt to claim that the reason the illegal immigrant didn't show up for their court date is because the summons to court was lost in the mail, which is freaking hilarious. It's like the dog ate my homework version of defending illegal activity. But you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who doesn't even know the Fourth Amendment argument. She's saying they're violating Americans' constitutional rights. No, that's not true. Repeating narratives over and over and over again, hoping that someday they will ring true with the rest of the country, was a failed attempt at the time. And now that we see more individuals paying attention to news cycles that last longer than 36.5 seconds, it's really starting to drag down any momentum that Democrats might have enjoyed in late December heading into early January. Now, back to the Minneapolis fraud and riots situation. I do want to get to this. So there are still protests, and I will get to the riot part, but protests taking place in Minneapolis. They did a blackout economy day where everyone was supposed to not show up for school or for work. So they're out there walking very sluggishly because it's freaking cold in Minneapolis. It's rather cold in the rest of the country, but it's freaking cold in Minneapolis. So they're marching, they're holding their signs in negative 10-degree weather. This is called this is in opposition to Operation Metro Surge from Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. Now, the really funny thing about their little blackout protest today is that it was supposed to freeze business in Minneapolis. Who does that hurt? Does that hurt federal law enforcement? Is that what that's supposed to show? So as you will recall, people like Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, people like Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers said, you can't get out there and just arrest all the illegal immigrants and send them back because our entire economy is built on the slave labor of illegal immigrants. Now, I don't know if you know this, but not showing up for work doesn't do wonders for the economy either. You don't need to get on Family Feud and go, Steve, let's see, ways to hurt your economy. Not showing up for work. It's not exactly a heavy trivia question here. Yet this is their big method, like their big, impressive, exciting show of solidarity. And then they decided to just go all at it. Because again, the peaceful protest thing, they get out the riot shields. I should say there's an asterisk here with riot shields. Julio Rosas, a phenomenal riot reporter, I think for the 200th episode of the Tony Kinnett Cast, Julio and then Greg Price and Logan Hall and I sat down and we talked about these protests and riots at length. And one of the things we made fun of was that a lot of these Antifa, anti-ICE, anti-Trump rallies that turn into protests and riots, they get out these what are supposed to be riot shields and are essentially cheap Rubbermaid trash cans cut in half. And this is their big riot shield. It's supposed to look really, really impressive. Here's, by the way, what that looked like. So they've got the trash cans. They're cut in half. Maybe they're spray painted poorly with like matte paint, which I think is a waste of money and time. So this looks also, actually, they don't even have half trash can lids. This appears to be cut in thirds. So man, I guess inflation's hitting hard. But then you've got the like cheap sheet metal sign that they ripped off a millennial burger joint wall that just says "Ice Out." That is if you read it horizontally. Otherwise it's spelled Ayukiits. Which I don't know. You have to ask the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota. Maybe that's an Ojibwe language. And then you keep moving. And then you've got the Palestinian flag, because freaking, of course. All right? I mean, come on. It's easy, all right? You're going to be mad at the Trump administration, right? And you're really mad that ICE is moving through neighborhoods and arresting people that illegally immigrated here or have committed rampant fraud, either from the Latin American countries or from Somalia. And so what you do is then you show up with a big sheet metal Palestine flag. I assume one of two things here. Either number one, they're stupid and retarded, which, I mean, hey, the quality learning center. Maybe it's not pumping out the best of graduates. Or number two, they were too lazy to paint over the sign from the last riot and protest. And they have like the 3M respirators on, which I find funny. I don't know if you guys know this, by the way. Like the cheap painting respirators made by 3M, no offense to 3M, those do not filter out tear gas. Just to be aware, just so that you know. I just think that would just be kind of useful information for the future. So anyway, they showed up, they got their big, one person has an oversized cutting board with what appears to be a really ugly version of the Star Wars like Rebels, like the Rebel Alliance logo, but like that mated with a sickly pelican. Then we got the Rubbermaid Brigade over here again. And this person, I can't really tell from the angle, but it appears as though this person has wrapped Walmart grocery sacks around her weave. Now that's some ingenuity. I mean, I've seen the shower bonnet stuff, but I've never seen the Walmart bag weave wrap. That's a new one for me. Very exciting, innovative, I would say. Boy, I'm excited for him. And then one person was facing the wrong way. One person's got an umbrella in case, it rains. So we've got Gary Poppins over there ready for the riot with his umbrella. Then we've got a very impressive, the keffiyeh again. One person looks as though they attempted to paint at a Colorado ski lodge. Just the best of the best. Now, ICE did announce at one point, one particular ICE official took the podium to say, hey, this is where these individuals came from. This is who showed up. The common argument that is made by individuals on the right is that there are buses dropping off protesters. There are protesters that are dropping off the equipment for the protest. Now, again, already, and I'm looking for the piece of footage. I didn't load it because it's from yesterday's show, of the black painted school bus that dropped off a bunch of protesters in front of the Whipple Federal Building. We might have to find that later. Today, though, these riot shields were dropped off in a U-Haul. Check it out.
Moments ago, a group of agitators, a U-Haul van filled with shields. Oh, it's not coming up.
I feel that.
All right. Shields and gear decided to come over here to the Whipple building and block traffic. They're currently trying to impede us from getting out of the building and going and do our mission. I'll tell you right now, they're going to fail, because no matter what they put up in front of us, we are here to do a job to protect this community, to protect Minnesotans, and to keep the criminal illegal aliens off the street and put them where they belong, back into detention, and remove them from this country.
All right, now there's a new child arrest story. I know. I too am shocked that after the last one was debunked, they're trying a new one. So the new exciting story is that the ICE agents have now detained a 2-year-old girl. Wow. I mean, next, I guess ICE is going to be detaining a fetus. We just have to up the ante every time. But a 2-year-old girl in South Minneapolis, and they put her on a commercial flight out of Minnesota. Now, here's the good news. Despite a judge's order ordering the toddler's release. What's the actual story behind this? So details are a little scarce at the moment, but what it appears, although this is left out of a lot of the left-wing reports of a 2-year-old now being arrested, a 2-year-old girl being arrested, she was deported with her parent to Texas, as in the parent is being deported. And so the parent's saying, please let me keep my child, is then moving her to Texas with her parent so that they can then go through additional court proceedings. Yeah, that's it. And again, the administration has made this very clear. They're not going to separate children. I do appreciate how individuals like Brian Krasenstein, other like liberal pseudo engagement farm pundits over on social media have tried to say, and a judge ordered that she be released. Released to who? Released to who? I'm not satisfied with this camera angle. Released to who? She's 2. Who's she being released to? Barney? Who's she being released? What, is Bluey making a pickup? What are you talking about? Released? Why should she not stay with her parents? The idea that in the United States, if you just hide behind your children, you can violate the law is ridiculous. And the longer that individuals over on the left attempt to suggest that we should be either ignoring people who violate the law or change the law to make everything legal, is beyond nonsensical. Yet this is what people in state legislatures like those in Oregon and Virginia and New York are attempting to do with every single waking breath. Now, I do want to hop away for just a minute. We're going to come back to the rest of these rumors and stuff. Mayor Jacob Fry of Minneapolis, he's at it again. He's very upset that J.D. Vance came to Minneapolis. Again, there's this weird notion in Minnesota that the state government gets to secede whenever it wants. Because they were stupid enough to vote for Mondale, that means that they get to do whatever it is that they want. Here's Jacob Fry, just deeply upset that the vice president of the United States would support upholding federal law.
J.D. Vance is taking a whole lot of my talking points, but not all of them. He said, quote, come out and protest, but do it peacefully.
Wow, how dare he? How dare he say, yeah, if you want to legally observe or protest, that's totally fine. Just don't obstruct law enforcement. Now he's saying, Vance stole my talking points. Why is this upsetting him? You know the answer. Because the Trump administration has never said, hey, it's illegal to get out there and protest. Hey, it is illegal to record officers. No one said that. No one's being tackled and arrested for doing that. If you harass ICE officers, they may get out their phone and snap a picture of you, as is apparently happened in Maine. People are very, very upset about it. How dare they snap a picture of a legal observer? Incredible. But Fry is really upset here because when you actually look at law enforcement, they're like, yeah, go ahead and protest. You may be stupid out here in negative 10-degree weather protesting the arrest of a repeated child sex offender. But, do that if you want. Fry, that was his entire argument, was that the government was against that. Now he has nothing.
That sounds exactly like what I've been saying since the very first moments following the shooting of Renee Good.
But that's not what you've said following the shooting of Renee Good. You said, and I quote, ICE, get the F out. That's not the same thing as get out there and just peacefully protest, hold a sign up in the air. You've also ordered Minneapolis police not to intervene when individuals violated the law, like when they did at City's Church in Minneapolis.
Peace is not spraying irritants and chemicals at peaceful protesters. It's not detaining a 5-year-old. It's not dragging a pregnant woman through the streets. They are arresting United States citizens.
For what? For what? Why are they arresting United States citizens? I really have scoured, because there are instances where a couple of ICE agents have made mistakes. We will talk about those tonight even. We'll get into those while we're also tracking some of the news out of Iran, which we're going to have to shift to in a second because we have an update. But regarding Jacob Fry here, they're detaining U.S. citizens. Why? When you body slam like LaMonica McIver, federal law enforcement, you're like a middle school chaperone at a dance, cutting in between a couple going, make room for Jesus. When you do that between a federal law enforcement officer and the individual with the final removal order they are trying to arrest, guess what? You might get royally decked by the law. And you know what? The law will win.
They are detaining people that have done nothing wrong.
Show me your source. So far, what I've seen is that there a claim that a veteran of some sort was detained for 8 hours before, he was allowed to even call his family. We've already found out there is way more to that story. Way more to that story. And the details, while they are still shaky, suggest that no, innocent people out there, playing chess in the park, grabbing a Subway sandwich in Chicago at 2 a.m, you know what? No, they're rather unmolested.
Going after people exclusively based on the fact that they look like they're Somali or they look like they are Latino, and no reason beyond that.
No reason beyond that. Now, I seem to remember, you seem to remember, that the federal government said, hey, here's a list of people with final orders of removal, especially violent criminals, that we have record of that were last seen in Minnesota. Can we have them? And Tim Walz said no, and then something about giving teenage boys tampons. And so the federal government said, okay, well, we have to enforce federal law. So if you don't show us, we're going to come in after you.
They've stopped fathers that are on their way just to drop off their kids.
Why? Why was the father dropped off? What was the father? Again, the question why, while Captain Bean and Dirt Eater up here, referencing the video where he ate at a Somali restaurant, looked as though he was about to puke, the pile of what appeared to be dirt and beans on the plate. I just don't necessarily believe you. No one believes you. You're about as trustworthy as tap water from Flint, Michigan.
Minneapolis, we want to solve crime. We want to arrest murderers. Let's do it. We have had relationships with a number of federal administrations to successfully drive down crime. If their goal
sources, dude, trust me,
is to keep Minneapolis safe from criminals that are doing bad things, we agree, regardless of where those criminals are from. We want to make sure that they are held accountable and that we're able to keep our city safe, as he said, to end this large-scale deployment and send these agents home.
However, there are multiple instances that we have the documentation of in states like Minnesota, like Illinois, where the governor's administrations, Walz or Pritzker's, have released repeat violent offenders from state prisons, from local city jails, back into the community because they didn't want the federal law enforcement to get a hold of them. So you can't have this both ways. There's my favorite movie, something that no one's ever asked, is The Outlaw Josie Wales. And as a kid, my dad used to laugh because my favorite line from The Outlaw Josie Wales is when an individual looks at an officer who is lying to him and says, "Don't piss down my back and tell me that it's raining." When you have individuals like Mayor Jacob Fry of Minneapolis who look at you straight in the face right after you have witnessed illegal immigrants caught with orders of removal, with rap sheets that are longer than one of the names of these particular Venezuelan or Somalian violators of the law, they look at you and say, "Oh, well, we're all for arresting murderers." They can't stop people from going and harassing a church. In fact, the judges then try to intervene and say, "No, you're allowed to harass Christians. That's totally fine." But my gosh, if you ever drive over a pride flag we've painted on a sidewalk, federal prison. Personally, I find that remarkably suspicious. As one commentator that I, as a daily national correspondent for the Daily Signal, my normal job is to go on TV during the day and argue things. Luke Ball, over on Newsmax today, made an excellent point regarding the lack of arrest of Don Lemon. It's like, well, he was a journalist. It doesn't matter if anyone else was doing anything illegal. He was just following people around and journalisming. I seem to remember a number of journalists who were arrested following the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol, who followed the rioters into the U.S. Capitol to just take photos and videos to document what was going on. They were arrested, federally charged, some of them thrown into jail. One of them, Stephen Moore, over at The Blaze. So before we all get out here and pretend as though, wow, there's this standard of law and realistically we're all very in favor of holding up the law, there are a lot of people who have violated laws that there is recent confirmed precedent for, that are now being let off the hook because you don't like the party affiliation of those who are being arrested. Or those are, may I say, the ID, the documents on country of origin and country of citizenship. All right, we're going to cut away really quickly here, bring a crew back from the commercial break, and then we need to talk about the breaking updates out of Iran, the Middle East at large. Don't go anywhere. A lot to get into tonight. We haven't even got to the pro-life controversy stuff. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Closing time.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast, where it might be closing time for the Iranian Islamic regime. So right now, as you may be very well aware, the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln and several of its destroyer escorts are now entering the Arabian Sea. That is just to the west of India. They are making it eerily closer towards the Persian Gulf, and it is going to be a rather interesting couple of days. The reason it is going to be a couple of interesting days, there is another U.S. destroyer which has been relocated to the eastern Mediterranean off the coast of Israel and Lebanon, who had previously, or I should say which had previously, defended Israeli, Iraqi, and Lebanese airspace from retaliatory missile strikes by the Iranians after the 12-day war. So, as we were the crew that was on the air first out of any network coverage on the strike at Fordo, we're keeping a very close eye on this particular situation. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is issuing all of the threats that they can. They're doing their root and tootinest. So, one Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps general turned lawmaker, Ismail Khorsari, has warned, quote, "In the event of any U.S. mistake, its bases in West Asia will be targeted," end quote. We've heard this before. You've heard this before. I've heard this before. the argument to be made that Iran is going to do something extra magical and fantastical and have all of this retribution, I've heard it before. I've heard it from American commentators before with vacation homes in Qatar. Scoreboard. No. Right now, what I have seen are individuals who the President of the United States gave an out to. Made it very clear. They said they're going to stop hanging people, and they're going to stop it. They promised they'd stop. Now, there are members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, as well as the Islamic regime in Iran, which have now come forward to say, no, we're not stopping hanging people at all. In fact, there are multiple reports of individuals who are still alive, who were part of the massive protests, who have been thrown into body bags, still alive, and stacked in warehouses where they can be heard moaning as they suffocate and mess themselves before passing away from their wounds, from starvation, and from thirst. Now, Khomeini believes that there is still an opportunity to find his way out of this. The rest of the world, though, is coming to the conclusion that the United States is about to pay a little visit to the Islamic administration in Iran. British Airways, Air France, KLM, Lufthansa, the Swiss, they're halting or canceling all flights to Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, as tensions in the Middle East continue to escalate. The airspace is shifting. United is also pulling a lot of flights. It is potentially shifting a current flight that was supposed to be headed to Tel Aviv, perhaps to Istanbul. We don't really have confirmation yet, and I kind of hope we don't. Flights that change direction mid-flight, I don't really think that should be public knowledge as to where they're shifting flight to for security reasons. But what should be known right now, the president and the vice president of the United States are probably within an arm's reach of the war room. So President Trump today addressed the March for Life through a video. We're going to get to that here in a couple of minutes. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Washington, D.C. for the March for Life, back from Minnesota. Trump also back from Davos in the World Economic Forum. It is likely that the United States will take some kind of action once it has its resources fully in the region. The best estimate right now, again, not a confirmed thing from the United States presidential administration, that the reason that last week the president chose not to go through with a strike to Iran, in which there were already several military aircraft that were in the air, there were several, may I say, sorties in a rather curious formation that were already above low altitude flights, circling around the runway in the way that jets don't necessarily circle, but that's kind of an expression here. The president canceled what was likely to be a certain military operation in Iran amid the active protests, because there were those in the administration, specifically within the Department of War and the Combined Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said, hey, we probably don't have enough resources and assets right here in the region right now to accomplish the level of shock and awe the president of the United States usually likes to display before sending a picture of the American flag to his social media accounts. So we are tracking this in real time. We are making sure that while some of the airspace is being cleared, Iran has not closed its airspace yet. There are a couple of rumors going around that Iran has closed its airspace. At this point, that's false. Iran still has its internet shut off for its civilians. They are still actively attempting to jam civilian devices like the Starlink, the internet satellite service by Elon Musk. Media outlets in the region, not like Al Jazeera, but like Iran International, are reporting that Tehran is increasingly throwing out combative official statements, suggesting that they may finally be taking U.S. military deployments more seriously than Washington's signals of diplomacy. This is the one piece of analysis that I want to give on this, other than why I think one of the U.S. destroyers was moved to the Eastern Mediterranean, which, to be fair, is also analysis and speculation. The president's strategy regarding a lot of military strikes right before, especially in his second administration, but we saw this with Soleimani in his first administration as well, right before he is ready to drop the hammer, right before one of our boys from someplace like Missouri sends a early 4th of July firework down the hole of some dictator's precious air defenses is to amp up the calls for diplomacy. Right before the president clears some type of big, huge operation, the United States, especially through J.D. Vance, which the president is fully aware that J.D. Vance is seen in the public as kind of an isolationist, especially given, Colby and the Department of War. But the president has absolutely used that to his advantage multiple times. There's a group of people who think that the president is unaware that Vance in some aspects is kind of undecided on foreign policy. We don't know whether he's sometimes an interventionist or whether he's an isolationist. We don't really know who he's listening to. The president knows this. He's very, very well aware of that. The president is very focused on how people around him think and feel. It's something he is very, very, I say this even in a healthy way, obsessed with. I don't mean that as an insult. And knowing those around him, the president makes it clear, maybe we're going to give him an off-ramp. Maybe we'll send J.D. Vance over there and he'll give him a little of the old razzle-dazzle. Looks like that beautiful commentator from Indiana, Tony Kinnett. And then, right as it appears that the president is about to do absolutely nothing, then you get all of the flashy big red siren emoji reports that the United States has, removed the pride of yet another foreign power. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. Now, there's an excellent question from Congress that I was about to talk about. James from the comment section says, hey, does Congress know? No, absolutely not. And that is a good thing. And the reason why it is good that the Armed Services Committee in the House and the Senate are not told a ding dong dang damn thing is because whenever a prior administration, be it the Biden administration, the first Trump administration, the Obama administration, or the George W. administration, would notify armed services committees, all of a sudden, the Washington Post would know and publish an article, and therefore letting the targets of United States operations know in advance of a U.S. strike within minutes of notifying Congress. We've seen Trump do two alternatives to this. So in the case of the Fordo strike, the president notified, I believe, the Senate Armed Services Committee. Don't quote me on that. He may have notified both Armed Services Committee through Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. But I know that he at least notified the Senate Armed Services Committee about an hour and a half before the United States struck Fordo. And there was really no time. So that would be the first instance. During the Venezuela capture of Maduro, I don't believe Congress was notified at all until the operation was already in place and Maduro had been secured, which is a good thing. Again, if I know that federal judges are currently trying to rule that if a system is broken, if you've got a bowl with a bunch of holes in it, you got to keep throwing water into the bowl with holes. You got to, hey, man, this colander's not holding water really well. We'll throw more water in it. You don't have to do that. You don't actually have to do that. The same with the Armed Services Committees. If Armed Services Committees are leaking like a sieve, then perhaps don't let the Armed Services Committees know well in advance. What are you going to have? Mark Warner from Virginia shaking his jowls and complaining loudly? Oh yeah, that's new. So we're going to move over to some of this conversation regarding the pro-life, the March for Life today, in which a lot of not furious, angry left-wing individuals marched peacefully in Washington, D.C. without thirds of Rubbermaid trash cans. Our Elizabeth Mitchell on the scene there today, doing some excellent reporting, interviewed the guy who formerly used to be Rachel Levine in the Department of Health and Human Services, the dude in a skirt. Well, the guy who replaced him, Elizabeth Mitchell, our White House correspondent, interviewed. A phenomenal investigative series that she's doing over at dailysignal.com regarding the administration's cuts to Planned Parenthood and all of the weird mechanisms in place to fund abortion here in the United States. So I believe Elizabeth has got a pretty good update for us.
Hi, Tony. This is Elizabeth Mitchell reporting in front of the Supreme Court at the March for Life. I want to highlight some of the things that the Daily Signal's reported on this week. around the March for Life. So one of those things is that the Small Business Administration is investigating if Planned Parenthood illegally took $88 million in loans that were meant for small businesses. And so if they find that those loans were taken illegally, that money will be returned to the U.S. government, taken away from Planned Parenthood. So that would be some huge news right there. Another thing is that HHS is moving forward with a rule to make sure the government is not paying for illegal immigrant children to travel to cross state lines to get abortions. This morning, on the morning of the March for Life, I was able to interview the Assistant Secretary of Health, Brian Christine. He told me the whole executive branch is dedicated to promoting the culture of life in the United States, and said that he is really dedicated to making sure federal funds don't go to funding Planned Parenthood. One more thing I'll highlight that Daily Signal reported on is that in the state of Maryland, there was a program where Obamacare funds were being used to fund abortions for people whose insurance didn't cover abortions, and the Trump administration is putting it into that as well. They're telling Maryland that they need to rescind that law, and Maryland's expected to do so. And so that's what I'll highlight for you. There's lots going on. Vice President Vance gave a speech today to all the pro-lifers, got a lot of cheers, talking about how they have an ally in the White House. The most interesting takeaway to me was he addressed the elephant in the room, which he said is that some pro-lifers think he's not doing enough on this topic, but that he is going to be moving at the pace as quickly as they possibly can, and he appreciates the disagreement amongst the pro-life movement because it holds him accountable and helps him to stay strong in fighting for the pro-life cause. So thanks so much, Tony.
Great stuff from Elizabeth Mitchell. Thank you very much for your reporting. So the elephant in the room that she described, the President of the United States a couple of weeks ago floated that maybe in order to get some things moved through, that the Republicans agreed to compromise a little bit on the Hyde Amendment, which forbids federal tax dollars from going to services involving abortion. And immediately, and correctly, by the way, a lot of Republicans said, no, absolutely not. No, 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 no. And the President of the United States, from what I can tell, said, okay, because the president throws out ideas, and often some of them are popular, some of them are not popular. It's how he does things. So there are a lot of people who are also very, very, very upset that the President of the United States and his administration has not been able to completely claw away all of the funding. Some federal judges have reached in and said, hey, this amount of money, this other kind of money is still going to Planned Parenthood, or still going to Misoprostol, or however that's pronounced, that Plan B abortion pill that is very medically dangerous to women who take it, not to mention, obviously, committing the murder of an unborn child. All of these little gripes came to, I won't say a head, but there were individuals like Laura Loomer saying this afternoon, why is the GOP pushing more abortion messaging in a midterm election year? Didn't they learn their lesson in 2018? Trump doesn't like when the GOP focuses on abortion. How many times does he have to say this? Trump gets it. The GOP will blow the midterms. And that's a really, really weird thing to put out there, is that on the day of the March for Life, complaining that Republicans don't want abortions, and then suggesting that the president clearly, this is like Laura's like claim here, the president, he knows that like abortion's not popular as an issue in this country, so what you really need to do is just shut up, because that's clearly what wrecked the midterms in 2018, which is not remotely true. That's not what wrecked the 2018 midterms. It was pushing candidates forward like Carrie Lake, who were awful. Like that kind of candidate, that was like the candidates in 2018 sucked. They were awful. That was the reason the election was atrocious. And also, cocky people going into midterms, pride cometh before the fall, especially in midterm election years. So, that aside, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, responded to this and pointed out the president literally sent a video to the March for Life today and encouraged me to accept their invitation, which I was happy to do. And then he says, it's interesting that some conservative influencers spend all of their time attacking the administration and sowing division. It's disgraceful, actually. So let's actually play President Trump's clip to the March for Life, and then we're going to get into some other kind of bigger news on the national scale for the day.
Hello to everyone at the March for Life. For 53 years, students, families, patriots, and believers have come to Washington from every corner of the country to defend the infinite worth and God-given dignity of every human life. In 2026, as we celebrate 250 years since our founding fathers recognized the right to life in our Declaration of Independence, I want to thank every single one of you who was out on this winter day, a beautiful day, but it's winter nevertheless, to stand up for the unborn. 6 years ago, I was proud to be the first president in history to attend this march in person. Since then, we have made unprecedented strides to protect innocent life and support the institution of the family like never before. There's never been anything like it. In my first term, I was honored to appoint judges and justices who believed in interpreting the Constitution as written. That was a big deal.
That is often overlooked. How the president's appointments to, including the United States Supreme Court, were crucial for the last couple of years of this country, including the pro-life cause. Now, the president goes on for another 2 minutes. We're going to have to keep moving because there is more news to get to. But at the moment, I do want to make it rather clear how crucial it is when the Senate of the United States and the president start talking about judges. Who appoints the judges and then who confirms their appointment in the Senate? That is everything. You will notice today when we have talked about everything from international issues all the way over to the domestic law enforcement policies here in the United States, all the way over to policy regulation and the interpretation of the Constitution. It all comes down to the judicial. Everything matters. In the United States right now, really, people only care about the president. They only care about the executive branch. That's why they only really come out to vote in elections every 4 years. That's all people really care about, because I'm going to level with you. That's all people really talk about in school. That's it. The only thing people really ever discuss when people are taught about the United States, the only thing the media ever really covers is the president. No. Congress and the judiciary are just as important as the executive. And if you do not have a Congress that is willing to write laws and uphold its constitutional obligations regarding things like the budget, and you do not have a judiciary that is willing to interpret the Constitution and the law accurately and fairly, then what you are going to have is a call in this country for an executive branch to take outsized actions in order to rewrite and to rebalance the separation of powers here in the United States. And that has with it an opportunity for quite a lot of success and total and utter disaster. It's one of the reasons why there are so many right now that are rather nervous, though they are getting involved into politics more. It's a very strange time here in the country. All right, I promised you that I was going to show you an inside look at ICE training, anti-ICE training here in the United States. You've heard about ICE Watch and all of these groups showing up to do their protesting, and they're resisting, and they're illegal observing, and they're always showing up with these like perfectly printed signs and the Rubbermaid trash cans. Maybe you want to join ICE Watch. I don't know. Maybe you're like, I don't really know about that big, huge sign-on bonus and federal jurisdiction of ICE. Maybe I want to join the other side here. You know, you want to do a little, the Confederacy rides again, except it's like far more gay and retarded. Well, boy, do we have the trainings for you. We have them right here. We've collected some of the recent anti-ICE trainings that are going on in weird community centers and libraries all around us. We're going to get to that in a second. Don't go anywhere. And also maybe a little Somali culture, a little bananas and rice. Some of you didn't believe me when I said beans and dirt. We're going to talk about that too. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't you go anywhere. A lot of news tonight.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Looking at the comment section, I can't help but notice there are some individuals who are already getting very, very cocky about the midterms. They're saying, oh, it's a blue wave coming. It's a red wave coming. Oh, it's all over. Maybe before you get out ahead of your skis, maybe you need some skis in the upcoming snowstorm to go with your milk, eggs, and bread. Just before you get out ahead of yourself, maybe you need a little bit of training. A little bit of training. Does the body good? You got to get out there, got to be active. I noticed, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, whenever you're getting ready for a big snowstorm, all of the news outlets, they send their reporters out to the supermarkets and they interview people, and they somehow find individuals who have never seen a snowstorm before to talk to the news, saying like, I'm going to get out there and run in the cold weather because it's going to be nice and enjoyable. Or a guy saying that he's ordered a snowblower. He's sure it will be delivered even though it's set to arrive after the snowstorm gets here. That kind of stuff. Maybe you need a little bit of training here. There are a lot of people that seem like they haven't had enough education. So I want to do a service to you here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. I bet you didn't know that it takes more than just showing up to one of these protests to resist ICE. It takes more than showing up to a Target, buying some salt, and then returning the salt at that Target. Yeah, that'll show Donald Trump. It takes a little more than that. You got to do a little bit of edumacating. So I give to you, the fine people of the Tony Kinnett Cast, anti-ICE clapping training.
Billionaires keep funding ICE. Billionaires keep funding ICE. The working class goes out on strike. The working class goes out on strike.
I want to point out two things right off the beginning. When I told you random community centers and like libraries, I wasn't joking. This is in Boise. Now, when there's no music and it's just people clapping. So first of all, they're clapping on 1 and 3. So da 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 da, or maybe even perhaps clapping on beat. It's in 4/4. Sorry, music junk that no one really cared about. So if they're clapping on the beat, you already have the high IQ individuals in the front who are clapping off beat. But if you can't handle clapping to a chant by yourself, if you need to practice this with a group of your peers, I don't know what to tell you. I hope your shoes are Velcro because it must take a god-awful long time for you to figure out how to tie them. So just in case you thought I was joking and just making fun of them, notice everyone's clapping on beat. And then there's this lady in the purple, or maybe that's a dude. I don't know. It kind of looks like James May from Top Gear in 2003. Not entirely sure. The guy next to the brawny paper towel knockoff, you know what I'm talking about. This individual is clapping off beat. And then this one person in the middle gives up on clapping during the chant. I mean, it's a lot of work. At least 1/16 as intense as doing one jumping jack. Finds their second wind. Oh, good. Purple shirt's back on beat. Okay, so if you have to practice your chants, I mean, there you go. You always kind of wondered, right? Like where they actually sat down and learned. I mean, one thought maybe you just showed up and then the person, they chanted it from the megaphone, like at the free Palestine. And admittedly, there were two words, free and then Palestine, and they would like mix up the syllables a little bit. But in this case, they have actual chants. When I showed up to Christian summer camp as a child and we learned like the chants, like the basic Christian school summer chants, summer camp chants, like, VICTORY, that will be our battle cry, like those kinds, we didn't take classes on those. I don't ever remember any kind of time in basic where they're like, all right, let's sit down and learn the basic cadences. Okay. Left, right to left. This is a double time chant, kid. No, you pick them up as you go along. It's also artificial. It's funny. And in Oregon, they're going all in. They've got PowerPoint presentations on how to report people. You've heard how like the Irish is the Gestapo, apparently. Well, here is a little Soviet era East German class on how to report your neighbors for being pro immigration customs enforcement.
I'm going to talk very quickly about the Sanctuary Promise Act. So Oregon is a sanctuary state. We have the oldest sanctuary law in the country. It dates from the early 1980s. And our law says that state and local agencies cannot enforce immigration laws, criminal or civil. And when there's a violation, any person can file an action to enforce in court. We're going to talk in the next couple of slides about what this means and where there might be a violation. But if you have reason to believe that a state or local government agency or worker while on the job is helping in any way with immigration enforcement, then you can report online with the Oregon Department of Justice. So there's an online reporting form that.
So, you see a citizen out there engaging in wrongthink. They think that maybe you should be a citizen of the United States if you're going to do things like, vote in an election or participate in the United States economy, things that federal law requires. And then you, in Oregon, you poor soul, you then report it. Oregon will send the goon squad after you. A little Stasi goodness. And man, I tell you what, exciting stuff. So they've got trainings for that too. Again, excellent, thrilling times. Finally, I want to show you to get the physical side, because you see these people out there before they get decked by ICE, they might throw half a punch. Where are they learning these incredible moves? Because they're not watching, movies with testosterone like The Karate Kid. They're not doing a lot of wax on and wax off, So what is it that they're up to? Well, they're attending Antifa boxing classes in Oklahoma City.
I bet you didn't know that we have a queer fight club right here in Oklahoma City. And I bet you also didn't know that we're about to celebrate 1 full year of this very successful community self-defense program. Now, some members thought we should do...
Oh, that was almost a full elbow.
A Jean-Claude Van Damme, Kumite style type of event, but that didn't quite make it out of plan.
So it's like, people have said maybe you should do some type of event to show off like the skills you've learned, like some kind of like a karate event, a belt promotion. Some of those people are going to need a lot of fabric for that belt. But then they're like, well, it never really made it out of the planning stages. Do you know why? Maybe because one of your signature move was the upper arm flabber. You're doing the chicken dance and calling it a fighting style, homie. I don't think you're cut out for this. Yeah, maybe it's time to pick up the Rubbermaid shield. Because I don't know who you're going to hit with the obese bouncer 5000. I don't know who you're fooling there. There's an old game going by the name of Smear the Queer. It was not like an instruction for a fighting style. Just cool tips. Just cool tips. You, me, and Dupree out here. All right. So excellent stuff. Now, I did mention some mistakes from ICE. The left is running around right now suggesting they have the most incredible gotcha of all time because there was an individual who was using his role as an ICE officer to lure 16-year-old girls by masquerading as a 17-year-old dude. And the feds caught him and arrested him. Here's that particular press conference.
This one shames. This is a tragedy in many respects, but people at the Department of Homeland Security, I know there are great people there that come to work every single day and do their jobs and do it admirably. Unfortunately, Mr. recently married back here is not one of those people. He works for ICE, and he is an auditor for them, a civilian employee. When he was arrested, he said,
"Oh, he's not actually like one of the ICE agents. He's like an auditor. He's like a contractor that they have contracted to do some auditing of things." Okay. Well, that is a little different than like an ICE agent.
ICE boys. Well, unfortunately for him, we locked him up, we put him in our jail. He got reappropriated to our jail, and my understanding is he helped send people to send federal authorities. I think he's going to see some federal authorities because I think the feds are going to take this case. So,
I mean, they should. I don't know what the gotcha the officer's trying there. Like, well, I mean, I really don't care for officers on either side of the aisle for whatever reason doing that. When you're giving a press conference, leave the puns to me, okay? Like, we don't need this right now. We saw really disgustingly during the investigation into the Brown University shooting, had like the mayor and the police chief getting up there and like, what's the deal with that? It's like, stop. No, not the time. And also, we're here for details and information. Just hot tip there for you. But in the particular case of this individual here, in this Operation Creep, as they called it, if this is an individual who is convicted of trying to solicit sex from minors, I'm pretty sure that there is one half of this country on the political side who would like to see him publicly hanged. Again, I don't care whether you've worked for the feds, whether you've worked for the meds. I don't care whether you have been a missionary, whether you've worked in social services. I don't care whether you're a school teacher, whether you're a terrible person, good person in your previous activities. If you engage in any activity that is sexual involving a minor, you should be hanged. Sorry. And by that, I mean, I'm not sorry at all. It's not a gotcha when the same standard applies. Again, I seem to recall that there is one kind of judge or prosecutor in this country that continually advocates for releasing people. Again, like we saw earlier in Florida, releasing the guy because he couldn't afford the therapy classes.
Now, I have researched into this case since the latest event has taken place.
You always hear this from those on the left, right? Whenever there's a mistake made, the right will go, that was a mistake. We're looking for the people that are responsible for this, and this should not have happened. This individual made a mistake. It's disgusting. We'll make sure this doesn't happen again. Here's what we're going to do to stop it. And then when an individual on the left has to admit that there's law enforcement or someone that made a mistake that got people killed or got people raped or assaulted, what have you, they'll say, well, I did some research and I wouldn't do anything differently because I'm actually quite wonderful and empathetic. I once watched 3 episodes of Sex and the City and I think that I'm just the best. Consistently. That is their attitude. Now, they're very, very kindly I believe one super chat about this particular thing. Crunched Grace Hopper sent a $20 super chat in. Again, you guys do not have to do that. Very kind of you, though. Thank you. She said, my therapy sessions are $200 an hour, 3 times a week. So, go ahead and imprison me should my funds deplete prior to my cure from lifelong subconscious denial of joys, resulting from Executive Order 9066 initiated traumas. Prison won't change life much. I got to be honest with you here. If the idea that like this guy couldn't afford, there are people who are currently in therapy that is very, very expensive with qualified medical professionals. You can't afford $7 or $150 a month for court-ordered services. I don't know what to tell you on that one. Very, very kind super chat as well from Parks179. Very nice dollar super chat. Very kind of you. Also a $5 super chat as well. Oh, wow. Thanks for hitting it out of the parks this evening. I'm sorry. I can't help it. So those things, I think, set aside, we will probably move to the last story we've got this evening before we wrap it up for the nice snowy good times. Unless if Iran goes rather warm, we're going to come back on the air and cover that. As long as I have power and internet, we're going to be covering that the moment something like that breaks. There was one particular story that I also wanted to mention. There are also riots going on in Maine, in which people are carrying around like cardboard guillotines. So someone's out there doing arts and crafts in Maine, making fake guillotines to threaten killing federal law enforcement. Hey, no justice, no peace, get ICE off our streets. I wonder if they practice that in the community center, like clapping on beat to that one. Also, you have from earlier on in the show, we talked the Palestinian flag is there for some reason. That's exciting. Really, really cool, good times happening there.
No justice, no peace. Get ICE off our streets. No justice, no peace. Get ICE off our streets. No justice, no peace. Get ICE off our streets.
I like the one lady who had the poster that says ice melts under resistance. Okay. Good one. The resistance crowd is very strong. They're here. Like Don Lemon leading the way. I'm still here. I'm still here.
Look, I stand proud and I stand tall.
That's great. Awesome. Thrilling stuff. So that's going on in Maine. I didn't get a chance to mention that. I wanted to. Also, because I know you were looking for this, there are some other congressmen and women who are out there with some bold new measures. So Shri Tanadar, known for having the ugliest wig in Congress, And look, I have some big eyebrows. This man puts my eyebrows to shame. There are not enough weird thread mall kiosks from 2009 to deal with this man's eyebrows. He is out here with not just voting for funding against ICE, but for voting hell no to funding on ICE. Yeah, Shri Tanadar, ladies and gentlemen.
But
I'm voting hell no on additional funding for ICE. ICE must not be funded. They are a rogue agency. They are.
Okay. When you are mad, basic acting class, when you are mad, you frown. Okay? All right? You're like, I'm doing this because I am mad. They're a rogue agency. I believe this. Don't get out there and go, hi, I'm Shri Tanadar. You know what really grinds my gears? ICE. It's awful. It's awful acting, dude. Step it up. Attend one of those clapping classes in Idaho, man. They will get you straightened out.
Terrorizing our citizens, our cities. I will not fund them. No funding for ICE.
Full smiles all the way through. I'm incredible. Man, we really do need to fund some training here. I understand why that judge didn't want the money to stop. When the money stops, they get really bad at doing this stuff. The USAID funding dried up, and like all of the really cool riot shields got replaced with like great value brand plastic wrap. I mean, really, the standards have just gone right down the tubes. Now, the post-legal observers, you've been hearing about these legal observers who are carrying phones. I wanted to show you the quality of legal observance that's also going on around the country. Emotionally adjusted individuals, for sure.
America is built off of immigrants. I'm an EMT, emergency responder. I see people, like, after they have, like, interactions with ICE, this person was, like, beaten, bruised, like, broken bones.
Okay. She's an EMT, supposedly, and she's observed people, interactions with ICE, beaten, bruised, broken bones, tuberculosis, AIDS, who knows?
And like the ICE officer demanded that they come with in the ambulance. They're just terrorizing the American people. Even though
You mean someone who violated the law? So let's assume this is an individual who, like, you know, the super duper ultra queer boxing team.
I bet you didn't know that we have a queer fight club.
Right? So let's assume one of those power-packed, you know, Little Mac reruns gets out there and they're going to go for it, right? You know, get out there, you hear it get ding, they get out there in fight with the ICE officer, and then all of a sudden the ICE agent just starts, you know, like beating the ever-loving crap out of them, and it's like really rough, broken bones. And that, again, that person has already violated the federal law. The crowd is screaming. Right, one of those situations. Well, then the ambulance shows up. And then the ICE officer, the federal law enforcement officer, says, hey, that person violated the law. I'm coming with you. Guys, that is what's called a standard police practice. That's a thing. The idea that it's like if you get injured in an interaction with the police and that suddenly becomes your get out of jail free card, no.
they say that's what they stand for, is like, we're so against domestic terrorism, and that's what these immigrants are going to bring. Like, you guys are the domestic terrorists.
What do you think about the resistance that has grown?
I mean, I love to see it. I love to see people standing up for what they believe in and standing up for what's right. And, like, American people have the right to do that. We have the right to assembly.
15,000 nurses in New York City are now on strike.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons they're striking is that the giant hospital corporations don't even provide proper health care to healthcare workers.
Yep. Oh, I know much about that. Oh my God. I love to see nurses fighting this like horrible treatment that they're getting, underpaid, overworked, understaffed.
What's your opinion of the way the Democrats are just rolling over in front of Trump? In fact, the Democrats in Congress voted for $10 billion for ICE.
Yeah, it's embarrassing to even call myself a Democrat. It's almost just like the Republican Party at this point.
Yes, it's truly marvelous. A shout out again to, I didn't get a chance to mention this yesterday before we wrap up for the evening here. FBI Director Kash Patel announcing that the FBI has captured yet another in the top 10 of the FBI's most wanted. In the first year, they've already caught 5 or 6 of these guys. Guys, that's insane. Again, I am one of these people that's happy to levy out the criticisms, but say what you'd like, capturing over half of the top 10 most wanted list, the Biden administration took them 4 years to get 4 of them. And then the new FBI walks in, and in the very first year, rounds up at least 5. Here's the arrest of Kash Patel and the arrest of Ryan Wedding today.
Without getting into operational sensitivities, Ryan Wedding was apprehended last night in Mexico City. And to safeguard the integrity of the ongoing investigation, we will not go into that. But I think it goes without saying, to go down to Mexico, to find a guy who's been on the lam for multiple years for some of the most egregious crimes on planet Earth, takes an interagency-wide effort led out by President Trump, our DOJ, and our partners in Mexico, and very grateful for that partnership.
Yeah. That, not bad at all. Not bad at all. I'd like to see more of it. And when you have a federal judge that undoubtedly asks you to release Ryan Wedding because he probably can't afford Queer Boxing Club, well, you know, maybe say no. Kind of a cool take there. Also, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has now confirmed that he is totally up for impeaching D.C. District Court Judge James Boasberg. Yeah, absolutely. That's stellar to me. Also reports that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent definitely wants to see Alberta secede, which again, also great. Not necessarily the same excitement that I have over actual judges being impeached, which by the way, once this starts, if it starts, again, that's an if federal judges start being impeached for specific miscarriages of their constitutional oath, then that will become a normal thing. And then it'll get a little bit messy because those kind of things always become just a little bit messy. Okay, I've got a couple of things that we're keeping an eye on for the evening. A pair of 3 M22 hypersonic Zohran missiles supposedly struck a substation power plant near Kyiv. That's really the only particular major military news that we kind of have at the moment. Nothing out of the Iranian situation yet. So, again, we'll bring you any updates that we have as soon as those are released. That said, hopefully you have a fantastic evening, that you stay safe through the snowy snowstorms. Again, any news breaks on the Iranian situation, we'll be right back here live. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC.
Since the founding of America 250 years ago, many things have changed. The homes in which we live, the clothes we wear, the jobs we hold, the conveniences we enjoy. But some things never change. The commitment of husband and wife, the importance of passing along our values to our children, the rewards of service to community and country, the faithfulness of God. Some wonder how America has thrived for so long and how we can ensure she continues to. As long as we keep first things first, we've only just begun. America, the beautiful.